Okay, my dear friends, students, community, learned lecturers, professors, and people who love literature. Good evening to you all from Sri Lanka. Today we have Dr. Angeline Sorna, who is the Assistant Professor of English of Jayaraj Annapakim College at Periyakulam, Theni District, to deliver us a guest lecture on Oedipus Rex as Tragedy, Cult, and Critical Theory. Dr. Angeline Sorna is an ardent teacher, a philanthropist, and who is a person with values and ethical lifestyle. She loves her students so much. She loves to spread the light of knowledge to many, and she has joined us to give this guest lecture so that we in Sri Lanka who are undergoing the economic crisis at this time could not only enjoy but also enhance our critical thinking, our understanding of this play Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. I really thank her for giving us this moment, this precious time in our life. Now over to my student to welcome Dr. Angeline.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Angeline, fourth year student of Department of Languages and Communication Studies, Trincomalee Campus, Eastern University in Sri Lanka. I'm very happy to welcome all for today's entitled Oedipus as Tragedy, Cult, and Critical Theory by Dr. Angeline Sorna, Assistant Professor at Jayaraj Annapakim College for Women, Periyakulam. Before beginning this session, I would like to place on record our senior lecturer, Dr. Hans Avarimuthu, Faculty of Communication and Business Studies, Department of Languages and Communication Studies, Trincomalee Campus, Eastern University, for providing this platform to us. I get this wonderful opportunity to welcome today's chief guest, Assistant Professor at Jayaraj Annapakim College for Women, Department of English, Dr. Angeline Sorna, for this webinar today. She has completed her Bachelor in English from Saratakur College, Tirunelveli, 1999, and Masters in English from Jayaraj Annapakim College for Women, Periyakulam in 2014. And she completed her PhD in Bharat Desan University, Trichy, in 2023. She is University Gold Medalist in undergraduate, Monomanian Sundaranaru University, Tirunelveli, 1999. She has won the first prize for proficiency in postgraduate, and her thesis was highly commended thesis in PhD. She has 10 years teaching experience and has presented in various national and international seminars, conferences. She has published research papers in reputed journals and prepared study materials, written books, and books chapter 2. I feel honored that I was given this opportunity to speak about you, ma'am. And on behalf of everyone, we feel lucky to have you at today's webinar session. Today, we have gathered here for the webinar arranged for the fourth year student of BA Honors in Language in Trincomalee Campus, Eastern University, Sri Lanka. So I'm sure we will be enriched by this webinar. I hope this 1 hour will be more intellectual and more interesting. Once again, I welcome all of you for this session. I hope you all leave with a full of memorable knowledge at the end of this session. And feel free to clarify your doubts on the topic and share your thoughts with our chief speaker. Now, the floor is open for you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Janani, for that sweet, warm welcome. And I'm audible, right? Yeah, okay. And thank you. Heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. Rohan Savarimuthu, for inviting me for this guest lecture. It's a real honor. And sir said like so PG students have Oedipus Rex in their fourth, upcoming semester. So it would be nice if they could have a lecture on this. But I'm also happy that some of my colleagues and friends had also joined. But because this is mainly prepared for the students of sir's university, it will be more like student oriented, and I hope this would be an enjoyable time for all of us. Okay, so Oedipus Rex, it would take a long time to prepare. If you have to really do justice to the text or to the influence it has had over, cultural and intellectual fields. But even if a university had to offer a 6 month course, even that would even won't be enough to scrape the just the top of the iceberg. But this 45-minute, 1 hour talk, would, it would be a very, very short one. But I would try my best to give it in a neat manner. Like the title goes, I've given the title as Oedipus Rex as tragedy, cult, and critical theory. Probably we will also look into all the three aspects of the text. And because, see, this is imagine the power of this particular text, Oedipus Rex. It's a very remarkable work of literature. And imagine for the past 2 millenniums, like millennia, it had held the imagination and awe of so many people. And it's the story of human predicament, fate, and it's always got its everlasting charm. So let us quickly have a look at that. And so there are certain works of literature that do not just stand or stay as literature. They transcend. After a point, they transcend their limits as literature and become something more. Usually that happens to myths, because you see, not only to Greek mythology, to every mythology, Indian mythology, Egyptian, Greek, Chinese, or Arabian, whatever mythology you take, it has the power to transcend the literary aspect and become something more. It becomes a structure for us to interpret life, to to formulate our values, ethics, and it even shows us how life works. So especially when it is handled with the care and skill by somebody as great as Sophocles, it is made to last. That is what has happened to Oedipus Rex. And now, as we are going to talk about a text that has had its birth like 3,000 years back, or like it was performed 2,500 years back and more, like we need to have a quick overview, or like a quick glimpse at the historical context to understand the tragedy, I guess. So here in my PowerPoint, if you can see, this is the theater in Greece. And Greece, as we all know, was especially around 5th to 4th century BC, during its classical era. It was the hub, it was a cultural hub for everything that was sublime, like art, literature, theater, sports. For everything, Greece was known for it. And they say, like, even Rome was, though it conquered, Rome conquered Greece, Greece conquered it back with its literary works. So that was the thing of Greece at that time. So they have this amphitheaters where they performed plays, and as you can see, like 13,000 people could sit at one time. And I was only wondering, like, how would be the acoustics? Now we have very good sound system. We have mics, we have speakers, but in those days they didn't have all those technology. But still, these players, these actors could throw their voice across like such a big structural marvel. And then I was surprised to find that architecture was done in such a style that it is really a marvel. Like it's the limestones kind of carry the sound. It seems that even a pebble that was dropped on the stage could be heard in the last row of the amphitheater. That was how it was beautifully structured. And around this period, like around 5 BC, regularly they had this Dionysian theater festival. If you go to Greece now, even today they have this, like how Olympics started then and they still have that. This Dionysian festival is also held in Greece still, and people from all over the world come and sit in these amphitheaters to watch it. But now technology and other things are also used, but they are still continuing the tradition. So in those days, they used to have it around the end of March or in the beginning of April. And this would go on for days, probably a week. And it was done in the honor of the Greek god Dionysus, who we all know is the god of wine and music and theater, fertility. So in his honor, it was conducted, and the first day it was the very word was pomp. Pomp. They used to do it with much pomp. That is where we get that word pomp. So they used to bring the statue of the image of Dionysus, and it used to go on like that. And after all the celebrations and revelry, then they would have days of competitions, theater competitions, like especially the three main Attic tragedians. We had Sophocles and Aeschylus and Euripides. And all three of them used to, and also maybe some other people too, like comedies we know were not as respected as tragedies in those days. So people looked forward to watching these tragedies. So in one day, three tragedies and one satyr play would be enacted in that amphitheater. And after all the performances are over, and after a day's rest, the results would be announced. So that is how seriously they took it. And 13 to 15,000 people sat and watched all those things. And, tragedy was considered very high as epic. And, the best tragedies are supposed to have come from Greek civilization. They examine the themes of free will, predetermination, justice, retribution, everything connected to human life, experience, knowledge. And where do they get their stories from? Usually they draw their inspiration from the epics Iliad and Odyssey of Homer, because Homer lived almost 300 years before these playwrights. So most of these stories were taken from the epics and performed. And Sophocles, who has written Oedipus Rex, has won more than 24 times, in this in these competitions. So here we have Sophocles, and he was a very quick biographical view we'll have, and then we'll move on. So Sophocles came from a very influential family, and he was known for his good looks, his he was gifted in every way, like he could act, he could sing, he was very loved by people, and in his long life, he was a very successful writer, singer, actor, playwright, and he was also involved in the politics, and he had very good influential friends with whom. So that is Sophocles. But now he had written more than 120 plays, but now only 7 had survived. And out of which we have the Theban plays, Antigone, Oedipus Rex, and Oedipus in Colonus, at Colonus. These 3 are actually not an exact trilogy, but they have the same characters featuring Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus, and also Creon, the brother-in-law of Oedipus, are the 2 people who feature in all the 3 dramas. But the story talks about the same family. So in that way, they are connected. And usually people believe that Oedipus Rex was written first, and then Oedipus at Colonus, and then Antigone. That is how, but then that was not how it was written by Sophocles. Antigone came first, and then Oedipus Rex and Oedipus at Colonus. And some of the contributions by Sophocles was like another interesting thing about Greek theater is only one person was allowed at the stage at one point. That is why he was called the protagonist. Now also we use the word protagonist extensively, but that was used for that one one person who was allowed to stand on the stage. He can use mass. There would be a chorus, but there would be only one actor. It was Aeschylus who made it into two actors. Then there was more dialogue, and now adding the third actor to the Greek drama, the credit goes to Sophocles. And he was also the one who used the background. Now we have background for our plays, like, they play a very important role. Now there is LCD screens and it becomes very beautiful, colorful. But in those days, like, it was Sophocles who first introduced the back painted scenes, and behind that the actors could go quickly change their clothes or their mask, and then we would now come to his masterpiece, Oedipus Rex. So the story of Oedipus Rex was not written originally by Sophocles. Now, so many other writers had also written works or plays on this story. And even as early as Homer's epics, we find mention of Oedipus. In both his epics, Homer mentions, in one he talks about how Odysseus meets the mother of Oedipus in Hades. And in both the epics of Homer, there is the mention of Oedipus. So that was a story completely known to the people. But what is so special about Sophocles' Oedipus is a very concise, well-written, actually in 100,530 lines. It is just like a long poem. It is, it doesn't run into, it's not a voluminous work, but then it has so much of poignant energy, power, sway, that is amazing. So Oedipus Rex was written around 429, that was given here. And it was also, like I was explaining, it was also played in the theater of Dionysus, Athens. And actually, I was surprised to know it won only the second prize. We don't know which is the play that won the first prize. But even I don't know if that is still this famous. The play that won the second prize still stays with us to enchant us and influence us. So if we look at the title, or probably for those of my students or people here who would like to have a very short summary of the thing, maybe I would just tell the story in a very quick manner. So the story here starts, the Oedipus Rex written by Sophocles starts with a scene where people, an old man and a lot of people, children, everybody come and beg him to help them because there is a plague, like how we had COVID a few years back, like that. They have a plague that is ravaging their country. People are dying in thousands and born babies, and there's a disaster, death everywhere. So they come to him asking for help, and we see this glorious Oedipus Rex. Rex means king, right? So he is the king, and he is young, handsome, powerful, intelligent, and he wants to help his people. He calls them his children. He says, like, do you think I have not done anything for this? I have sent some people to go, not some people, Creon, his brother-in-law, to go find out from Delphi, the oracle of Delphi, to ask the gods what is the thing. And then just then, as they are talking, Creon comes back and he looks happy because there is some way their fate can be changed. And then he comes back and says, before Oedipus, the country had a king called Laius, and Laius, and that Laius was murdered. And if the murderer is found and exiled or punished, and then the plague would stop. So this seemed to be a very good way this plague could be stopped. There is some retribution, there is some remedy that can be done. So everyone is excited, especially Oedipus Rex. And he asks others more about the story, how he was killed. And in this way, we can even say that Oedipus Rex was probably the first narrative plot, the detective plot, where we have this quest of, like, who is the killer, who killed Laius. And so the irony is, the person who is in this quest of finding the murderer is the murderer. Without his unwittingly that. And So the story goes on like this, but to tell it in a chronological order, this Oedipus Rex was not originally the king of this place, Thebes. He was born as the prince of Corinth. He was the son of Polybus and Merop. And there, one day, he is like loud, happy. And then one day, somebody calls him in a banquet, a drunken man calls him a bastard. That offends him, and then he asks his parents why this person says that, and then then he finds out that something is suspicious about his birth, and then he decides to go, because the people who don't answer, he decides to go to the oracles and find out. So there the gods tell him that he would one day kill his father and marry his mother. This prophecy horrifies him. He cannot imagine killing his father and marrying his mother. So he decides to run away as far away as possible from them. So he runs away from Corinth. And on the way, he is on a journey long. He's very disturbed. He's going far away. And there a few things happen. Like one among that is like there is a tussle on the road. Like there is a problem. And then he kills a few people on the road. That is one thing that happens. And another nice thing happens is his meeting with Sphinx. Sphinx is a mythological character which has the face of a woman, the wings of an eagle, and the body of a lion. So this mythological creature is supposed to have stopped travelers and asked this question, like this riddle, what is this creature that walks on 4 legs in the morning and 2 legs in the afternoon and 3 legs in the evening? And no one had been able to answer Sphinx's riddle. And he answers, it's a human being. As a child we crawl, and as adults we walk, and in old age we have to use a staff too, a walking stick. And then Sphinx it kills itself, and the place Thebes is which has been these people were having trouble with because of Sphinx. Now they are free and they're so happy. They welcome him and say, we don't have a king, marry our queen Jocasta and become our king. So they are very happy to have this young wise man as their king. They don't know where he came from, but because he was wise, they took him and made him his king. And now he's married Jocasta, who's slightly older to him. And he has had 4 children with her. And everybody loves him, and now this plague has happened. But now as this investigation goes on, he tries to find out who killed Lais. Slowly he finds out that actually this Lais and Jocasta long back had a son who was prophesied by the gods who would kill the father and marry the mother. So as a child, they had abandoned this child. They had put the legs together and gave the child to a shepherd to leave it on the hills. And somehow that shepherd passes on the baby to another person who gives it to the king of Corinth, who were the king and queen were childless, so they took up. So actually, Oedipus finds out that the fate he was trying to run away from he's run into it. So that is a very horrible moment for him. Everybody around him knew it initially. Like even as this investigation was going on, the chorus, the wife, even Jocasta, the wife mother, everybody, the old man, the blind prophet, everybody tells him, stop this, this is going to destroy you. But then he doesn't stop, and it goes on. Okay, now this is taking up a lot of time. Okay, I'll rush up a bit. So now here, this is a very poignant, heartbreaking story, because when this happens, he was trying to run away from his this prophecy, and he ended up running into it. So this horrifies him. His wife / mother Jocasta kills herself by hanging herself and taking her pin out of her a brooch, a golden brooch out of her. He blinds himself. And then his children are at the mercy of Creon. That is how this particular one ends. Okay, so if you see the title of the play is Oedipus Rex, and Oedipus means swollen feet, because as a child his legs were pinned together. He had this deformation in his leg. So it also, if we look at the word Rex, this is the Latin title, Oedipus Rex. But there is this Greek original title was Oedipus Tyrannus. Tyrannus, we know is the word that the tyrant comes from. So was Oedipus a tyrant. He seemed to be a very loving king. But here there is an interesting point that he was not mentioned as a tyrant, but more like it has another meaning also. Like in Greek, tyrant means a single leader. And also it has another meaning, which meant a person who is not a king by heir. But all those meanings are lost in translation. When it came from Greek to Latin, it was just taken in the meaning king and changed to Rex. And now the English translation, some of them, they have Oedipus the king. So now this is the play for us. And now Aristotle, who lived 100 years after Sophocles' play was written, was very much impressed by this, that we see when we read his poetics. So if you see Oedipus Rex, like we all know that Aristotle has given us a set of rules, like for all kinds of literary writings, like epic conventions and rules. Like so, he almost he thought that Oedipus Rex was the model tragedy, because if you see these plots, like it had a very complex plot. According to Aristotle, the horror, the pity, or the fear should not be created by the spectacle, not by gory scenes or fighting on the stage or bloodshed. It should come from the plot. The plot should be in such a way, it should chill your blood, it should horrify or create fear and pity. So that is the present here in Oedipus Rex. The plot itself is superbly horrifying, and the way the hero struggles. And then we have Peripatia, which is the reversal of fortune. Here, if you see the messenger who comes from Corinth, he comes to tell that his father is dead and he can come back. But the messenger who brings good news, the end completely unravels this mystery, this investigation. And it is at that point he finds out that he is the murderer. He is the person who has killed his father and married his mother. So this role of reversal and this anagnosis, which is the discovery or recognition, where he finds out what has happened, and such concepts propounded by Aristotle is 100% perfectly aligned in this play. And then we also have the prologue, which is the exposition, and then the rising action where the investigation goes on, who is the killer of Laius, and then the climax where they find out that Oedipus Rex is the killer, and he is by unwittingly, he doesn't do it on its own. The person he killed on the road in that in the tussle without even knowing that it is his father, he has killed the king. So that is the climax, and the falling action are the consequences. How Jocasta kills herself and he blinds himself, and then the resolution where he talks to his girls, talking, the lamentation of Oedipus Rex. And then we also have the unity of action, place, and time. It is one action in one place and one time, very superbly, concisely, perfectly written. And then we also have Hamartia. Aristotelian tragic hero is supposed to be somebody of good qualities and from great stature, only then the fall would be. So he fits perfectly into that template. And catharsis, we all know, is pity and fear and the purging of emotions. All that perfectly happens in this. So this is one of the very main reasons that why Oedipus has become more like a cult. I'll just have a sip of water. Thank you. So here we pause a bit to see what happens to Oedipus Rex after this, because we saw that according to Aristotle, this was the perfect play. Again and again in his poetics, he uses it as one of the most used examples in poetics is Oedipus Rex. So he uses this as a model, and as wherever Aristotelian theory of tragedy travels, his prescription of the perfect play, which is Oedipus Rex, also traveled. So down the centuries, we see all over the world, in Renaissance Europe, Western world, or over the Western world, in Renaissance Europe, like any university you take, Cambridge, Oxford, in Paris, anywhere, wherever Aristotle was studied, and he was one of the philosopher theorists who was much studied, much debated on, much revered. a philosopher, and whatever he said, people just obeyed, like they just took it for his word. Like, so when he said Oedipus Rex is great, then it went into all universities. So somehow, always down the centuries, the position that was not given to any other play, even about Oedipus, there are two other plays. Like I told you, Antigone and Oedipus at Colonus. In Colonus has these stories interconnected. But this particular play became a model play. It became more like a cult, a craze, like among readers, among literary critics, and it was a point of debate everywhere. And but then, on the stage, because of its supposedly immoral content, it was not played on the stage till like the beginning of 20th century in England. But in France, even in the beginning of 19th century, there were productions where people were acting these plays, and soon Freud watched it, and then we know what happened. Suddenly, after centuries after it was written, Oedipus Rex acquired a kind of different kind of energy to completely capture the people's imagination in another way. Yes, we are talking about psychoanalysis here. And now we move to the part where it becomes a cult and also into critical theory. So we all know, everybody knows everybody who knows Freud knows is connected with this Oedipus complex, the theory, and whether they have read it fully, completely understood it, everybody kind of knows this word, and it is very commonly used also everywhere. So here, how did it all happen? Like, so around 1897, Freud writes in his letter to his friend, he writes, he writes, a presentiment tells me that I shall soon uncover the source of morality. He has watched this movie, he was thinking about him, and he was beginning to think that he's stumbling upon a very important theory in psychology. And within 4.5 months, he sends that friend the first draft of his text on Oedipus Rex. Since then, Oedipus has not just stayed as a well-written tragedy. It has become a kind of blueprint of modern man's psychology, and also its influence. It has become a reference point to the entire school of psychoanalysis and the knowledge societies of the 20th century Western world. And here, if you see, very briefly to put it, here he takes mainly the part of parricide and incest. Parricide, where Oedipus kills his father and marries his mother. So he equates it to the universal love in the child. Universally, it is there, he says, the love for the mother and jealousy towards the father, especially in the male child. There is this triangle he develops. Okay, and the main thing that got him thinking about this was Jocasta's dialogue. Here I've given it on the screen. Many a man now in dreams hath lain with her who bore him. He hath least annoy who with such omens troubleth not his mind. So this is a scene where Jocasta tells her husband/son Oedipus not to go on with his quest for finding the murderer. Because at one point she understands the son, a baby who was abandoned long back, has now come back to become her husband. And unwittingly, without knowing, she has been with him and they had 4 children. This horrifies her, but she doesn't want him to fully know that. So she tells, see, leave this, gods can make mistake. And so many men had dreams where they had sexual relationships with their mother. So these things, if you ignore only, you can have a happy life. So this point got Freud really interested. So what is this? Like, so he goes back to refer a lot of books, and he finds that in interpretation of dreams, so many people had mentioned that they had dreams of having relationships with their mother. But that is not something they enjoy. It just happens and it horrifies them. And then that strengthens his argument. So he comes up with this book in 1899, The Interpretation of Dreams, where he talks about dreams as the royal road to the repressed feelings, as a child. And there he also talks about the death of the loved ones. Like, for example, like somebody might get a dream of about the death of a sibling. That can be very painful. We all wake up horrified when we get a dream like that. But he says this could be one of the childhood wishes, like repressed wish to do away with the sibling because of sibling rivalry. I don't want this younger sister. I don't want this younger brother. Some thought at some point of childhood, which was repressed, has come out like this. It has manifested itself in such a thing. So that could be such a in the same way, he also interprets his the relationship with mother. Where a child might have love towards the parent of the opposite gender and want to do away with the parent of the same gender. But after one point, he understands that it is a very immoral, bad thing to even think, and he has repressed it, and that has come out as thing. So these, we are all kind of familiar with this. And now we will also move to the connect he did with the, I'll try to wind up fast. I'll try to finish within 7:45. Okay. So here he talks about like Hamlet. He connects Hamlet. And there is another interesting point here, because the actor, Sean Monet Sully, this actor whom Freud has seen acting the role of Oedipus, was the same actor who also did the role of Hamlet on French stage. So it's highly possible that this connect came to him while watching the same actor playing both the roles. So he kind of connects Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, with Oedipus. And he says, here I have the quotation from there. He says how, we all know the hamartia, the tragic flaw of Hamlet was procrastination. He kept on delaying. He did not go ahead and kill the person who killed his father, though he explicitly knew that his father was killed by Claudius. He did not kill. He kept delaying. Why? And then he gives it like, his theory goes like, that was the childhood wish of Hamlet, to kill his father and marry his mother. Probably that was the wish. So that repressed feeling, that was, done, that act, that wish was done in action by Claudius. So he looks at him as an extension of himself, and he's unable to kill Claudius till the very last scene. So this is the connection made by made by Freud on Hamlet. But then, excuse me. Okay, so, but then now we have, this has become the cornerstone of psychoanalysis. This has become a very important milestone. After this, there is no turning back, like whether you like Freud and his theories, whether you agree or disagree with it, it is here to stay with us. So it has had a superb impact on all cultural and critical productions after that. And if Aristotelian knowledge was considered very fashionable and scholarly, the knowledge of Freudian knowledge, his theories, became the kernel for the man's quest for identity, psychological searches, and existence, drive, and whatnot. So actually, it became a very important, this point of psychoanalysis became a very important point. It has become very multidisciplinary also, but because you see, Freud is doing a multidisciplinary thing here. He took literary text, and he took idea from neurosis, and he brought it together, and further it became more and more interdisciplinary. So it has become a very important component in the study of psychology, sociology, what else? Gender studies, queer studies, or like if you have to study about like philosophy, any field, this idea has become a very important thing. So something that has stayed as a literary text moved on to become a cultural impact. And, it's also become a very important in the study of like studying man's modern social behavior, sexual behavior, civilizational behavior, for understanding modern man. And any educated man or a boy would think like, oh, that is so Oedipus of me, or like, I'm not this Oedipal, so it becomes a kind of touchstone, like, am I stuck in any of these development process, or like, have I transcended it? That is something everybody started doing. So this is what more a cult can look forward to. Can it grow any further, where it becomes a touchstone of one's own understanding of oneself? So that is where psychoanalysis, the Oedipus's connect with psychoanalysis took it. And now we come to the last part of the talk, which I will try to wind up in a few minutes, where it had further extensions into the various other fields. So it all started with Freud and psychoanalysis. But, each of the psychoanalysts also used it and expanded it in their own ways. So I've given a few books, and there are much, much, much more. Like I told you, a 6 months course on Oedipus Rex will not be enough to even scrape the top of the impact the text has had on the cultural and intellectual arena. Okay, so here quickly, if you see, here we have the structural study of myth by Levi-Strauss. So here he talks about not the psychoanalytical part of it. He studies the structure of the myths and how they help us to understand human quests. So here he studies, and one of the main myths he takes is Oedipus one. And if you see Derrida, in his of hospitality, here also again he's not talking about psychoanalysis, but because Oedipus is a name known to everyone now, he moves on to use Oedipus's second the Oedipus in Colonus, where he talks about refugees, exiles, and he talks about the role of Oedipus as the host, the guest, and such things are analyzed by Derrida in this book. And then we have Jung, who's like using thing. He also like if Freud talks about personal unconscious, he moves on to become like the collective unconscious. So people used it, expanded it, and Lacan, he was the one who called it conceptual watershed. The idea, this Oedipal triangle, it was called the watershed of moment. But then he goes on to make his borders wider with the language, symbolic structures. And then we have Ricker here, Freud and philosophy. He does a hermeneutic study and of Freud's works. And though he appreciates Freud's take on it, he goes on to say that this deterministic point, where he talks about, is not. There is more to human agency. There is more to. There can be a more nuanced knowledge of human agency, is what Ricker is talking about. And then now we, in the postmodern times, like a post-structural postmodern times, we still see theorists, literary and critical theorists talking about Oedipus Rex. But only thing, sometimes they talk for it, like against it. Here we have Deleuze and Guattari, where they anti-Oedipus, where they talk about the nuclear family, how this triangle here reflects in the capitalist society also. So here they call it anti-Oedipus, and in Gender Trouble and other feminists like her have issues with the way psychoanalysis handles this thing, and they say how it reinforces the patriarchal norms, how the power struggle is always gender oriented, and so they go on to refute it and argue against it. Some people have argued against it, and but still it is always it stays on the table. It is there always on the discourse. And this is the last slide, but before we go here, I will just give you one little thought, which one of my friends used to often say. I've always enjoyed that thought very much. The professor used to say that Oedipus is a very white Eurocentric idea, because in civilizations like India, China, Japan, we don't have this kind of family system, nuclear families where there is the father, the mother, the child, where this triangle can develop. But somehow they call it universal. And but then is it truly universal? Because as we know, in India we have joint families where in ancient times the men used to travel for trade, for war, and so many women together used to bring up the children together. In such cases, here the concept is actually a little different, because if you see our mythology like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and even the myth of Yayati, where like here the father takes away the youth of the son, the father takes away the life, and such stories only had been there. The son, instead of the son wanting to kill the father, in most cases we see the father trying to kill the son. So there is also this post-colonial touch to it, where can this be called an universal thing, this structure? So that is a thought I always found interesting. And this is the last slide, where, you know, like I told you, there are people who had agreed with it, who had applauded it, who had enlarged on it, and there are people who had argued against it, who had, but it is always there. Oedipus Rex is here to stay with us in literature, in all different ways. Like if you see here, you know, even in novels, novel is the sweet child of modernity. Now we don't have dramas anymore. Like we are all moving to, we have all moved to novels. But even here, if you see, like so many novels have the impact of Oedipus. And here, this drama, The Darker Face of Earth by Rita Dow, also it gives the same kind of story in a different, completely different plantation work, where the son ends up with the mother, and he there also his foot is cloven, and the same echo is there in this book. So today, even today, it is made into digital, you know, productions using a lot of technology. Then you have a lot of stage performances. It is being made into novels and movies, adaptations. And but still, the legacy of Oedipus Rex, which started 2,500 years back with the Sophocles. Yeah, the story as it started earlier, but the cult is here to stay with us. And that is where I end my talk. Thank you. So if there are any questions or anything, I can take.
So, my dear students, are we ready with questions and doubts?
Yes, sir. Good evening, madam.
Good evening, sir.
And actually, the lecture was very insightful, madam. And my question is, can you explain more about anti-Oedipal term?
Anti-Oedipus, actually, that is this. To be very honest, like I haven't read the book, sir. I have only heard of it from my friends, and but then I know what it is about. I've heard people talking about it, and I know it is arguing against it, using capitalism. But actually, I cannot give you anything more on that. But Luz and Gattari, it's a very good book, and probably all of us should read it. I'm sorry that I'm not able to give you anything more on that.
Yes,
So,
dear
Rohan,
participants,
in which paper do they have this text, Oedipus Rex? I would like to know.
they have a paper called Classical Drama.
Oh, class. And Rohan sir, you can probably tell us more about anti-Oedipus.
Beg your pardon?
There was this question which I could not answer. So, maybe you could tell us a little more on anti-Oedipus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was the question, and I was not able to answer it properly. Because to be very honest, I didn't read the book, so that particular book I hadn't read. So, if you can tell us something.
Even
more.
I have not come across this thing called anti-Oedipus, but in a sense, you take it in the modern sense with Sigmund Freud and everyone. Oedipus complex, which is more similar to, having a physical attraction to your own mother, the son's physical attraction to his own mother. But it never happens as in the play. So, even if you take, Sigmund Freud's way of coining this term and the meaning is actually against the run of the text. So these are the things that you bring into this anti-Oedipus, where it never happens. And in another sense, for female children, they are more attracted to their father, which is also called the Electra complex. So the son is attracted towards his mother, the girl child is attracted towards its father. So these all come into this anti-Oedipus concept. As far as I know, this is what I can, tell about it.
Also, this book by Deleuze and Guattari, which French theorists, anti-Oedipus, that was the slide I showed. That is why that was maybe if you had given me more time to prepare, I would have done justice to that question. Because there are very few things I couldn't go deep into. And
you have a question also in the chat box. Let me read it out. Good evening, ma'am. That was a well-structured presentation with clear introduction to the plays, themes, and character development. Very engaging presentation, ma'am. Great job. Okay, so it's a very positive comment, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
By Dr. S. Melvin. Is anyone? Saint Anjali?
Sir, ma'am, may I?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, in the Oedipus complex, it is considered as the foundation for Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, which is called Oedipus complex. And where the sexual attraction of a boy having for the same-sex parent is analyzed. But in the play, the boy unknowingly kills his father and marries his mother. It means that boy doesn't know until he kills his father and marries his mother that both are their parents, his parents. Therefore, how can it be said that the Oedipus Rex became a foundation for the theory Oedipus complex when both shares two different ideas?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But though he was innocent, he was actually running away from it. So one of the very important themes of the play is fate and free will, right? Where he tries so hard to run away from the fate. He hears this oracle and he's horrified and he wants to run away. And more he runs away, more he runs into it. So he becomes a victim to the fate. That is what happens there. But the action part of it, his intention and other things were not taken into. The main thing Freud was focusing on was the action, where though it was done unwittingly, killing the father and marrying the mother. And here, like I told you, that is why I read that text from Jocasta's dialogue, where she tells, many a men had slept with their mothers in the dreams. So you don't worry too much about that. So that particular point. And also he says how it did not horrify the people who watched it. Like people who watched it are more horrified by the killing of the father and blinding and all that. But the incest part of it, where marrying your own mother, having 4 children, that doesn't really horrify the audience as much. It horrifies the other things, the blinding, the fall, all those horrify the audience more than this. So he says there is a natural instinct in everybody, and that becomes this libidinal energy of this particular book. This gave him a superb, it opened itself to be a very good example for him to prove his idea. That is why he also added Hamlet to it. And because psychoanalysis believes that we have this a whole lot of uncanny, unspeakable, violent, aggressive thoughts and sexual instincts, and but then how they find their way out in dreams. So that dream word where Jocasta talks about, and the action of him, and how the audience were not that shocked, because at some point everybody has had a dream of probably something like this is what Freud argues. That is the connect he makes, though it is not exactly same. And in a way, thing is very innocent in that because he tries to guilt, though he feels terribly guilty in the end, he punishes himself. He has always been innocent. All those crimes were done by him unwittingly. So, but still, Freud could take up this point and join these two texts together because of these points, like especially the dream, the incest. I hope I answered your question.
Well understood, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sir, so if there are no more questions, can we wind up?
Any more questions? Okay. So if we are not having questions, maybe like we can go for the next session of vote of thanks. Yes, Prashanta?
Good evening, all of you. I'm Nusfa Nisar, 4th year student of Department of Languages and Communication Studies at Trincomalee campus. It's my great honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for today's enlightening lecture entitled Oedipus Rex as Tragedy, Cult and Critical Theory by the esteemed Professor Dr. Angeline Sorna, Assistant Professor of English at Jairaj Annapakyam College, Periyakulam. First and foremost, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, Madam Professor Dr. Angeline Sorna, for your thought-provoking lecture today. There is no any doubt that it expanded our understanding of this intricate subject. Again, we are deeply grateful for your time and effort that you have dedicated to sharing your valuable knowledge with us. Thank you, Madam. Now it's the time to thank all the participants who have joined with us today, especially my friends, third year brotherhood, and friends from our neighboring country. Thanks for your presence and encouragement today. Next, Dr. Nirbana Jayasundara, Senior Lecturer of Linguistics at Trincomalee campus. Thank you so much for your participation, Madam. Also, I would like to thank other professors from our neighboring country. And Finally, a special thanks goes to our facilitator, senior lecturer of English and head of the Department of Information Technology at Trincomalee campus, Dr. Rohan Savarimuthu, whose hard work has made this lecture possible today. Once again, thank you all for being a part of this memorable evening. Let's continue to foster a spirit of inquiry and a dialogue as we move forward in our academic pursuits. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nizar, for that lovely vote of thanks. So thank you, sir, once again for inviting me. And I hope I added some value to whatever they know already. And I was enjoying your students' welcome and their vote of thanks. The accent and everything was so very nice. I enjoyed. Thank you so much for your warm invitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Very kind of you to spend your valuable time for us. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.